Thank you for joining Wars of the Rosies as we continue with Part 4, American Indian Mysticism, from America's Assignment with Destiny by Manly P. Hall. American Indian Mysteries. All the Aboriginal tribes of North America practiced mystical and magical rites, and vestiges of esoteric tradition served by a priestly class distinguished for sagacity and personal integrity are still to be found among surviving groups, scattered over a vast area and divided further by a lack of a common language. These nomadic bands were approaching the horizon of national existence when the European colonists conquered their lands, decimated their tribes, and destroyed their cultural patterns. So diversified were the traditions of these people that it is difficult to summarize their beliefs and doctrines, especially after their legends, histories, and religious institutions were corrupted by outside influences. The European colonists were of no mind to search for the mystical secrets of the Indian life way. These settlers brought their own religious beliefs, which they were resolved to force upon the natives. There was no ethnologist or anthropologist among the Puritans, and many important landmarks of Indian philosophy were destroyed before they had been honestly investigated or appraised. Most of the tribal lore was in the keeping of priests and elders, and if these were killed or died without finding suitable successors, the traditions ended. Even today, older Indians find it difficult to select younger men to perpetuate these sacred institutions. Thus, it is unwise to assume that from available fragments a complete picture of Indian mysticism can be reconstructed. The Indian has always been an individualist, and neither circumstance nor inclination induced him to form extensive intertribal organizations. His way of life and the vast silences on his homeland caused him to turn within himself for courage, wisdom, and faith. He could not visit distant shrines of learning or sit at the feet of famous teachers. There were no books to ponder and no ancient sages to guide his religious convictions. Few strangers visited his camp with news or opinions from far places. He was part of a small family, and the tribal life, with its simple lore, was his only source of cultural tradition. A thoughtful observer of nature about him, the Indian lived constantly in the presence of mysteries, with no reference frame other than his own imagination. Though stoical in appearance, he was highly emotional, as indicated by his songs, dances, and festivals. His sensory perceptions were acute, and his legends indicate strong dramatic instincts among advanced tribes. According to Dr. Franz Boas, an elaborate series of esoteric doctrines and practices exist, which are known to only a small portion of the tribe, while the mass of the people are familiar only with part of the ritual and with its exoteric features. For this reason, we often find the religious beliefs and practices of the mass of a tribe rather heterogeneous as compared with the beliefs held by the priest. Among many of the tribes in which priests are found, we find distinct esoteric societies, and it is not by means rare that the doctrines of one society are not in accord with those of another. Esoteric forms of religion in charge of priests are found among the tribes of the arid region of the Southwest, the tribes of the southern Mississippi Basin, and to a less extent among the more northern tribes of the plains. It would seem that, on the whole, the import of the esoteric teachings decreases among the more northerly and northeasterly tribes of the continent. The medicine priests were trained by their predecessors or were called to their life work by some miraculous incident. The little Indian boy who early in life showed a tendency to dreams and visions was encouraged to select this career. In a highly organized tribal system, he was initiated into the religious institutions of his nation, receiving the lore of the old priest and fragments of tribal history. If he belonged to some small, wandering band, his entire spiritual education had come from within and was induced by fasting and vigil. The vigil was the most widely practiced religious discipline of the Amarins. In all matters of emergency or great decision, the Indian sought solitude. He went to some high place, built a small campfire, planted about him a circle of prayer plumes, smoked the ceremonial pipe, and waited through the long hours of the night for the voices. The voices instructed him in the herbs of healing, taught him the songs and dances, and brought him news of what was transpiring in distant places. There are many stories about medicine priests learning to leave their bodies at will and journeying into the Shadowland to guide the dying to the home of ghosts. Many of these grand old mystics were wise in the ways of the spirit and should be regarded as duly initiated members of esoteric orders. From Emerson's Indian Myths, Amerindian Pictograph of Manabozho, the god of light and the hero friend of mankind. The miraculous powers of the medicine priest extended over a wide variety of phenomena. They healed the sick, protected their tribes, directed the migrations of their peoples, and sought by extrasensory means the location of food, water, and other necessities. They predicted the future, induced rain and storms, projected themselves to distant places, and read the hearts and minds of their fellow men. It was in their power to induce visions and trances, and to receive the impressions of the star spirits. They also gained considerable proficiency in the mesmeric and hypnotic arts. Charles F. Lummis, who spent many years among the Southwest Indians of the United States, described the miracles performed by the medicine priest. Although naturally skeptical, his experiences among the Navajo and Pueblo Indians impressed him deeply. Mr. Lummis mentioned how Indians seated in their medicine lodge created miniature thunderstorms within the room, accompanied by flashes of forked lightning, while the outside was entirely clear. He says, "How the effects are produced, I am utterly unable to explain, but they are startlingly real." He was also impressed by the ability of the priests to change themselves into animals in the presence of spectators. Some priests could create an artificial sun inside the lodge. The miniature luminary rose in the eastern side of the room, crossed overhead, and sat in the west during the performance of the sacred chants. The Amerindian priest grew the sacred corn in exactly the same way that the East Indian mendicant grows his mango tree. The magician plants the seed which grows immediately, and about 3 hours later the stalk is laden with fully developed ears of corn. Other writers have reported that in some of the medicine lodges, the Indians are able to levitate large stones and to cause their bodies to float in the air. Unprejudiced observers have been forced to conclude that among most tribes of Amerindians, magical rituals are performed involving the use of natural forces beyond normal experience of human beings. From Lummis's Some Strange Corners of Our Country, Navajo Indian magicians growing the sacred corn. The Amerindian concept of cosmogony paralleled, in a general way, that of the Chaldeans and other peoples who dwelled in the valley of the Euphrates. The world consisted of 3 regions, with human beings inhabiting the surface of the central zone. Above this middle land was an airy expanse extending to the abode of the Sky Father. Below the surface were subterranean levels extending downward to the place of the Earth Mother. This cavernous region was like the dark and shadowy underworld of the pre-Homeric Greeks. In the Southwest legends, human beings originated beneath the earth in a kind of paradisiacal land. There also were mountains, valleys, and beautiful plains, and a sun and a moon that lighted the region. In the beginning, everyone was happy, but later an evil deed brought upon them the wrath of the gods. In most accounts, this lovely shadowland was destroyed by a flood. In some miraculous manner, a few righteous persons were preserved and took refuge on a tall plant, which, growing rapidly, finally broke through the surface of the Middle Earth, bringing the survivors to safety. The secrets of healing, prophecy, and magic came to the Indian from an order of beings called Manitos. This Algonquian word is now applied to the concept of powerful governing spirits. The Manitos were not actually gods, but superhuman man-like creatures, possessing extraordinary attributes and frequently considered as giants. The size factor, however, is figurative rather than literal. The Manitos were a divine invisible tribe, masters of magic, to whom human beings could turn for help and guidance whenever necessity arose. The effort to explain the term Manitos as only signifying a wonderful power and synonymous with the Iroquois Owenda is not sufficient to meet the requirements of the Indian religious philosophy. Orenda conveys more precisely a power or energy universally present in animate and inanimate creatures, and manifesting through the vital processes which cause these things to exist, to function, and to affect other existing and functioning things. It might be safer to assume the Manitos represented the intelligence controlling and directing the wonderful power. The Indian, therefore, was confronted with the same basic question which disturbs even the most advanced physicist. Namely, is there a supreme intelligence governing universal procedure? The religious concepts of the Indians, writes Dr. Boaz, may be described in two groups, those that concern the individual and those that concern the social group, such as tribe and clan. The fundamental concept bearing on the religious life of the individual is the belief in the existence of magical power, which may influence the life of man, and which in turn may be influenced by human activity. In this sense, magic power must be understood as the wonderful qualities which are believed to exist in objects, animals, men, spirits, or deities, and which are superior to the natural qualities of man. Most religions and metaphysical philosophies include hierarchies of divine creatures or tutelary spirits as mediators between the supreme being and mortals. The Manitos acted as wise distributors of the Orenda. The Indian fashioned these demigods in his own likeness, but bestowed upon them superior powers. The Manitos were aware of the most secret human thoughts and the most pressing human needs, and were capable of responding immediately to the rituals of the priests and elders. When the medicine man journeyed to the spirit land, he might be invited to attend a council meeting of Manitos. When he came to the great lodge in the sky, it resembled an earthly council place, except that it was large, more elegant, and usually filled with some strange light. The Manitos were venerable sachems, usually handsome old men, their faces full of kindness. There was a council fire, the smoking of the calumet, and the usual speeches and discussions. The lodge was a kind of superphysical senate, where all matters of grave importance were decided. When the session was concluded, the priest returned to his people along the sky road and reported the decisions of the great lodge. Between the Manitos and mankind were the souls of the illustrious dead. These were the olds and the trues, the sages of long ago, the great chiefdoms, warriors, and statesmen. They had led their people in life, so they continued to guard them from the other land. Speaking through the medicine men, it seemed natural to the Amarans that the heroes who had gone before should continue to serve the tribes they had guided in the long ago. Totemism was a kind of heraldry among the Indians. The totem was the clan symbol. More than that, it was a channel for the distribution of Orenda through the social and political structure of the clan. The totemic animal or bird was a spirit guardian, helpful because the creature possessed attributes superior in some particular to those of man. The attribute might be swiftness, strength, cunningness, or resourcefulness, and these qualities the totem creature shared with those under its guardianship. Each Indian also had his own totem, and while it took a familiar form, it was identical in principle with the guardian demon described in works of the Egyptian and Chaldean mysteries. It was considered a good omen to see one's totem while practicing vigil or in dreams or trances. It proved the proximity of a protecting power. The Abifavnet, a missionary to the Algonquians, identified the totem from Oti, the Otuti man of the Chippewas, with the Manitos concept in these words. It is to be presumed that in uniting into a tribe, each clan preserved its Manitou. The animal which in the country whence the clan came was the most beautiful, or the most friendly to man, or the most feared, or the most common. the animal which was ordinarily hunted there, and which was the ordinary subsistence of the clan, etc. And this animal became the symbol of each family, and that each family transmitted it to its posterity to be the perpetual symbol of each tribe or clan. Modern ethnologists have emphasized that the popular usage of the term totem is incorrect. The symbol is not strictly religious, but involves a social and family concept, with emphasis upon the importance of kinship. Many tribes, especially the Plains Indians, believed that thunder and lightning were caused by enormous birds. The rumbling sounds in the sky accompanying storms were due to the flapping of their wings, and the flashes of light were caused by the opening and closing of their eyes. In some groups, only one Thunderbird was recognized. In other tribes, there were several of various colors or a family of them. The appearance of the bird or birds is not definitely given. It might be similar to a large hawk, an eagle, or even a grouse. The Thunderbird could use its wings as a bow to shoot arrows, and small meteors were believed to be the heads of these arrows. On the plains, Thunderbirds were said to result from a contest between a Thunderbird and a huge rattlesnake or a dragon-like monster. Persons struck by lightning, if they recovered, were accepted as sages or holy men, having received a very strong medicine from the experience. In some areas, the Thunderbird was closely associated with the religious mysteries or societies. Those who saw this creature in their vigils usually considered themselves as intended for a religious life. The myths and legends of the Thunderbird are similar to the European and Asiatic accounts of the fabled phoenix, which nested in flames and symbolized initiation and adeptship. Early drawings of the Great Seal of the United States indicate that the bird represented thereon was a phoenix rather than an eagle. Like the Mexican coat of arms, which shows an eagle with a serpent in its claws, the American device is strongly reminiscent of a Thunderbird. These creatures were also said to inhabit a sky world above the clouds and served as messengers between mortals and the heavenly beings. Further south, the Thunderbird symbol merged with the Quetzal and the spirit feathered with Quetzal plumes. The Quetzal was identical in meaning with the phoenix of Asia, North Africa, and the Near East. The feathered serpent symbolism can be traced back to the hooded Nagas, or serpent gods of India, and to the winged serpents which occur in the writings and sculpturings of the Egyptians. The serpent was the messenger and servant of the Earth Mother, because it dwelt below ground. For this reason, rattlesnakes were released during the snake dances, in order that they might carry the petitions of the tribe to the mother who dwelt below. Birds were also carriers of tidings, and as they flew upward, they bore with them prayers to the Great Father who lived in the Sky Lodge. The Thunderbird was the most powerful and was the lord of flying things. The Thunderbird and the feathered snake were symbolical of the mysteries of the upper and lower regions. Priestly orders served this twofold cult, the secrets of which were revealed only by an internal mystical experience. Brenton, describing various devices used by the American tribes to conserve their religious secrets, says, "All these stratagems were intended to shroud with impenetrable secrecy the mysteries of the Brotherhood." With the same motive, the priests formed societies of different grades of illumination, only to be entered by those willing to undergo trying ordeals whose secrets were not to be revealed under the severest penalties. The Algonquins had 3 such grades: the Wabeno, the Mida, and the Jasakid, the last being the highest. To this no white man was ever admitted. All tribes appear to have been controlled by these secret societies. Among the Amerindians, secret societies existed for the perpetuation and enlargement of the choicest knowledge of the tribe. There were war associations, healing cults, and fraternities concerned with the religious mysteries, the keeping of records, and the dramatization of myths. These were ethical societies, orders of mirth makers, firewalkers, and hunters, presided over by elders who had distinguishing regalia. Women frequently became leaders of these groups. Among the Pueblo Indians, there were often a dozen or more societies in one village. While their objects were not always parallel, there were no friction between the memberships, and they united in all common responsibilities. The Indian was always a tolerant man on the subject of spiritual convictions. He never inquired as to the faith of his guest, but expected that every true believer would conduct himself in an honorable way. He respected the rights of strangers, and if he did not share in them or did not understand their meaning, he kept a respectful silence. The reference to the dramatization of myths suggests that a number of Indian tribes were practicing the same methods of presenting religious mysteries that were employed by the Greeks and Egyptians. Most Indian festivals emphasized songs and dances, but these songs were used principally to establish rhymes, and the words were of slight importance. Chants were a vital element in most healing ceremonies. Either the Western Hemisphere received a vital religious stimulus from early voyagers and travelers from distant parts, or else the Indian himself, by mystical experiences, shared a common inspiration with the priestly caste of other nations. The psychologist would probably assume that the esoteric tradition originated in the spiritual needs of the human being, regardless of his race or place of habitation. The search for reality gradually brought into being specialized groups of intensive truth seekers. These groups produced their own leaders, and such wise men and women were acknowledged as divinely inspired, received spontaneous admiration and devotion, were obeyed for their superior endowments, and gradually became a priestly caste. As civilization enlarged the temporal state of the tribe, the religious societies grew to become powerful institutions, as in Central America. While the tribes remained nomadic, the medicine men were less resplendent and impressive, but their functions were no less significant. These holy persons seldom took part in war and frequently were disguised by costume combining elements of male and female attire. This practice has been common throughout the religious world and has influenced the dress of pagan priests and Christian clergy alike. The androgynous human being, in whom there is a spiritual union of male and female attributes, has been widely accepted as personifying a superior type, capable of a greater understanding of the father wisdom and mother love, potencies of divinity. Such symbolism existed in all the great esoteric orders of the past. While ethnologists may be reluctant to admit that the Indians had any formal concept of an esoteric religion, examination into the secret beliefs of the priests of the various tribes shows that they were verging towards the adept tradition, even if it had not matured among them. The Medea Win, or Great Medicine Society, of the Ojibways initiated both men and women into the secrets of the arts of healing and the control of the vital current coursing through the nerve centers of the human body. The Society of the Medes, or shamans, had birch bark rolls, which depicted the arrangements of the lodge and included many strange pictographs. Of these, W.J. Hoffman writes, "To persons acquainted with secret societies, a good comparison for the Medea Win charts would be what is called a trestle board of a Masonic order, which is printed and published and publicly exposed without exhibiting any secrets of the order. Yet it is not only significant, but useful to the esoteric in assistance to their memory as to the details of the ceremony." From Hoffman's The Medea Win, etc. Sacred Birch Bark Record of the Midi Rituals. The secrets of the Medea Win were originally communicated to mankind by an initiate priest, Manabozho, or Great Rabbit, who was a servant of the Good Spirit. The cross was an important symbol in the Medea Win rites, and it is interesting that the Medeas steadfastly refused to give up their religion and be converted to Christianity. From Hoffman's The Medea Win, etc. General view of the arrangement of the Lodge of the Medea. The controversy as to the possible Masonic significance of the Medea Win's rites may be noted, but has slight bearing upon the essential facts. Although the birch bark rows have bestowed prominence upon the activities of this society, other tribes practiced equally significant rituals and ceremonies. Candidates advanced through 4 degrees, traveling towards the east, and the lodge rooms were enclosures open to the sky and connecting with each other through doors and passageways. The neophyte was tested and subjected to trials and hazards, and also was presented with a sequence of visual arrangements of symbols and other esoteric paraphernalia. The purpose of the Great Medicine Society was to enlighten the human mind and soul and to bind the initiates to the service of their people. It included a method for stimulating extrasensory perceptions and personal investigation into the secrets of nature. In 1919, Arthur C. Parker was invited into a secret lodge of the Senecas to witness their ceremonies. Here we heard the legend of Red Hand, a cultural hero who could hold conversations with the Great Mystery. From the Great Mystery, we learned to love all the creatures of the earth, and he spoke the language of the birds and animals. Red Hand was slain by a poisoned arrow because he would not reveal to his assassin the secret of his spiritual power. The animals, discovering by the power of scent that their brother friend had been killed, gathered in council about his body to find a means of bringing him back to life. Each of the creatures gave part of himself to restore Red Hand to the living. At last, the bear came forward and, grasping the hand of the martyred hero, raised him by a strong grip of his paw. Those acquainted with the ritual of the 3rd degree of the Blue Lodge of Freemasonry will realize that this story must have originated among the rituals of the esoteric schools. Mr. Parker, himself a 32nd degree Mason, sums up the account of his experience in the rites of the Seneca thus: "Little has been told. The door has only been held ajar the slightest space, and no secrets have been revealed. There were feather wands and deer skins, but no purple robes or crowns. Yet who shall say that the Senecas have not the thread of the legend of Osiris, or that they have not an inherent Freemasonry?" From Schoolcraft's Indian Tribes of the United States, 2 persons, possibly representing the Ganawida and Hiawatha, standing in the presence of Adotarho, the sorcerer chief of the Iroquois. In the area centering in what is now New York State and extending north and south a considerable distance, the 5, later 6 nations comprising the Iroquois Legion attended a high state of social and political integrity. The 2 great leaders of these Amerinds were Daganawida and Hiawatha. It is impossible to study the life of Daganawida, whose coming was announced by a mysterious visitor from the heaven world, without realizing that he fulfilled all the requirements of the Adept tradition. Daganawida was born of an immaculate conception, possessed the power to work miracles, prayed and fasted, practiced the vigils, was confirmed in his mission by the Great Father, and passed through numerous trials and persecutions. Hiawatha became his first and most distinguished disciple, and these 2 working together sought to establish everlasting peace among their peoples. The founder of the Inca dynasty of Peru was the initiate statesman Manco Capac, who flourished in the 11th century AD. He reformed the social and religious life of the tribes of the Amara Quichua race. In the capital city of Cusco, which he built, Manco Capac established the religion of the sun. He was a statement of ability and claimed to be a direct descendant of the sun god. The empire of the Incas, which he founded, is remembered especially for its experiments in socialized living. Peru has the distinction of having cradled the first successful utopia. Manco Capac emerges as one of the world's outstanding social reformers, with a vision thousands of years ahead of his time. He is said to have brought with him to Peru a divine bird in a sacred wicker hamper. This golden falcon is a form of the phoenix and testifies to the presence of the Adept doctrine. Manco Capac combines in his own person the offices of priest and king, like the Melchizedeks of Christian mysticism. Although some historians may be a trifle impulsive when they suggest that Manco Capac was a Buddhist priest, there can be no doubt that the Peruvian culture was heavily influenced by symbols, rituals, and philosophical elements usually associated with the Trans-Himalayan area of Central Asia. In Daganawida, with his great league, Quetzalcoatl, Kukulkan, and his splendid socialized empires in Mexico and Central America, and Manco Capac and the communal system which he set up in Peru, we have three clear and definite accounts of initiate leaders establishing schools of esoteric doctrines in the Western Hemisphere, from a consideration of their attainments and the systems which they inaugurated. We can come to but one conclusion. The mystery schools of antiquity were represented in the Americas by institutions identical in principle and in purpose with those of Asia and the Mediterranean countries. Thank you for watching, and please don't forget to share, like, subscribe, and comment. And if you can, please consider donating to Wars of the Rosies. Links to PayPal and Patreon are in the description. Thank you so very much.